Thank you, Alistair. Usually I'm introducing him, so it makes a nice change. Again, I'll have to issue another welcome on behalf of the OECD to the workshop. It's great to see you all here and so many of you, distinguished guests from all over. We have even people from as far afield as Australia. A 27-hour flight, you'll be interested to know, from Australia, but we're very, very happy to have you guys here. Thank you. As Alistair mentioned, I'm a former teacher, done a lot of research in education, and I'm also a parent. I think that's one very important thing we all have to go back to for parents. So, you know, my kids are 5 and 7, so I really see the importance of providing quality facilities for young children if we really want to give our kids a good, strong start in life. It's really tough out there, particularly in these difficult times, very, very tough. And with the current investment in early childhood facilities in this country, I think we can be pretty optimistic about the future. But, as you know, as with all investment, what's most important is how we use the money to best effect. So today I want to talk with you about the role of design in supporting quality in education. Now, you've heard from my colleagues Mio and Andreas, our work in education at the OECD is vast. We look at a number of themes, and they're here in the slide, from early childhood and schooling to transitions beyond initial education and equity and equality of opportunity. But the work that we do at the OECD Centre for Effective Learning Environments focuses on the physical learning environment. So we have about 20 members in 23 countries, and we try to work with them to improve the educational and operational effectiveness of educational facilities. So we work with designers, we work with planners, we work with school leaders, policy makers, researchers and others to explore how design can best support the needs of education and communities. Andreas showed you this publication, and this is our flagship publication. I'll be drawing from this publication later in the presentation on projects featured in this work. So we publish this every 5 years, and it showcases, this was published last September, it showcases more than 60 top schools and universities from about 28 countries, and they were voted by an international jury in their commitment to innovation in design to support education and communities. It includes a number of pre-primary facilities and kindergarten facilities in addition to tertiary and others. Now this school, Fuji Kindergarten, you'll see here, wonderful school. This was nominated the most outstanding example in the publication by our jury, and we look forward to hearing more about this from Takaharu Tezuka, his school, and the principal's school later this morning. So the OECD, we talk a lot about the demanding needs and the agenda of the knowledge society, and as Andreas was saying, developing 21st century skills. And so much is happening in the world. Developments in ICT is becoming increasingly complex. But you walk into any school today, whether it be kindergarten or even university, but perhaps less so, and you'll see that really nothing much has changed in over a century. So we should perhaps question what we're doing constantly. Perhaps too many of today's schools really still operate with very traditional approaches that are really not encouraging deep collaborative learning and the capacity for lifelong learning and innovation. So really, do we need a major paradigm shift for learning environments to catch up with 21st century needs and demands? And indeed, shouldn't we be talking about 22nd century learning? And how can communities initiate major endeavours of vision and innovation? And to my great regret, OECD, as Andreas mentioned, doesn't yet have a lot of data available to answer this question. But we do have a number of good conceptual frameworks and exemplary case studies that countries have been using that elaborate on what is, in theory, an innovative and effective learning environment in the eyes of the OECD. I'm going to look at this particular framework, which is based on work done by the Centre for Education, Research and Innovation at the OECD. Now, they've defined a learning environment as the interaction of 4 elements: learners, teachers, sometimes I really hate that word teachers, those engaged in promoting and facilitating learning. It's longer, but it's more accurate. Content, and 4th, resources. Resources, we can say facilities and technologies. Now, there's intense interest today in the nature of learning and creating the environments for it to flourish. Now, a recent report by SELE called The Nature of Learning, Using Research to Inspire Practice, elegantly yet forcefully defines the demanding educational framework that defines a truly effective learning environment. One that is learner-centred, one that is structured and well-designed, one that is profoundly personalised, one that is inclusive, and one that is social. So learning is effective when it takes place in group settings, when learners collaborate together, when there is a connection with the community. So our work at SELE focuses on the facilities and resources. Now, what we did, based on research and collaboration with about 30 countries, is that we developed a framework to highlight the important role of quality spaces in increasing access and equity for all in education, to improve educational effectiveness and acquisition of key competencies, and optimising building, operation and performance. Now, this quote here summarises the discussions over several years of a group of experts from about 30 countries on this topic. It defines the principles of quality and a number of defining criteria of an effective physical learning environment. I won't ask the interpreters to translate that. I will let you read that in the translation of the slides. So the experts also worked with us to define a framework for evaluating quality in education, which consists of 2 dimensions. Now, this first dimension addresses how quality is defined within the context of policy issues, and the second presents characteristics in the process of evaluating aspects of quality. And the 5 principles of quality are listed here. Fitness for purpose, as it relates to the benefit of the facility to the users. Let's talk to teachers, let's involve teachers, let's involve the kids, the parents, the communities. When we design a school, we're seeing this increasingly in countries, very, very important. It has to be fit for educational purpose and the needs of the community. It has to work, it has to be operationally sound. Another principle, symbolism, very difficult to define, but it's about being visually pleasing and offering learning opportunities, being inspiring and dynamic to be in the space. It has to be healthy and safe, and we come again to the issue of standards and requirements, and environmentally sustainable. So using this framework, we launched a pilot project involving 6 countries, and we developed a number of research methods to test how this was working in schools. The countries included Greece and Mexico, New Zealand, Portugal, UK, and even though this was conducted in secondary schools, I still think that some of the results from this pilot project, which we're still really analysing all the feedback, can also apply to preschool facilities. So if you're interested in that study, I can let you know more about that. Now, I'm going to show you some of the case studies from our book, Designing for Education. I'll leave a copy of the book downstairs for you to have a look at if you're interested. There are also order forms for the book. We developed a database to showcase all the projects from the book with the European Investment Bank. So all of these case studies are also available online if you'd like to have a look at it. We've got several hundred facilities, including maybe about 50 pre-primary. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the designs. I'll look at it in terms of the kind of quality framework that I was talking about, what an effective physical learning environment should be. Okay, so let's start off with the concepts of flexibility and diversity. We talked about agility, which is slightly different from flexibility, which is very important in spaces for young children. And I've gone back to the example of the Fuji kindergarten, which again, you have different size spaces, big spaces, not necessarily for a particular purpose. We have multi-use spaces, everything from storytelling to food preparation. We have to have basic spaces to serve any functions that might be required. For example, dormitory facilities, which are required in some countries and not in others. Spaces should allow maximum movement and expression for the kids. Very important. Now, I was lucky enough to go to Fuji kindergarten last year, and it was very inspiring. I have to say, I couldn't quite look at my kids' school in the same way, so because it was so inspiring. Mostly from the perspective of school leadership, a very, very important part of the success of this design was school leadership and working with the designer to implement a vision that was to the benefit of all the kids and having a pedagogical team that supported that as well. And again, this is a case study that you'll learn about in more detail and is very important for the future of design, I think, everywhere in the world. Now let's move on to another example. Obviously, kindergarten facility or preschool facility should be rich in colour and decoration, very welcoming. You don't necessarily see this everywhere for schools. This is a nice example from Argentina that was drawn from our publication. This is a pre-primary school, and the major aim of this design was really to create a magical atmosphere for the kids. So each room has an irregular shape, and the ceilings are all different heights, and their floors are laid with ceramic tiles and coloured mirrors. You've got bottles, and they've got all sorts of different textures and shapes integrated into this facility to make it a very, very creative, magical, inspiring space for the kids to play and to learn by doing. I think that's very important for kids at this age. It can look like they're playing, but they're actually learning, and that's something that Miho talked about as well. Accessibility is very important, particularly when you're looking at kindergartens which are in urban areas, which are in big cities. I know, particularly with my kids, they, in Paris, it requires a whole lot of other different considerations. Looking at this school in India, which is in a rural area, I thought was a good example of accessibility. Very easily identifiable entrance, the pick-up and drop-off areas are there. In many schools, they tend to forget about this. It's very important. Some schools it's actually not possible, but it's important to remember. The connectivity between the indoor and the outdoor spaces. Outdoor spaces, I think, really important for kids at this age. And gathering spaces where the parents, the staff, the students can gather either while they're waiting for the kids, to consult with the kids, or to see what the kids are doing. And having wide corridor spaces or no corridor spaces at all. We'll listen to some great examples from Australia about their, questioning the use of or the existence of corridors. But again, we have to also build that into the pedagogy. Again, this particular school is a very interesting example of that. On the topic of safety, security and comfort, again, easier said than done, with safety being such a huge concern in many countries. This school, you might remember, I think it was 2001, in Japan, in the Osaka prefecture, there was a man who entered an elementary school and who stabbed and killed a number of kids and teachers. And this, of course, was a dreadful, dreadful tragedy, and it really caused the Japanese to reflect on, how they were securing the safety of young in their schools. Now, what they could have done is to put up bigger fences to make it, more difficult to enter the school, to put more cameras. They did this to a certain extent, but they also had other solutions. What they did was they brought the whole community together as part of the rebuilding program, if you like, at the school, both psychologically and physically, to create a safe and inspiring school building, which was really an international model. So their motto was protecting our children through surveillance, but they used this, by surveillance they meant putting in more glass. So increasing visibility, basically, so that the teachers can easily look in at their students all the time. Again, the kids can also see the teachers, and to sort of create a more secure feeling in the school. One issue that is very, very important, I don't think really countries treat it as seriously as they should be, particularly in schools, is in environmental education. And what better way to start keep thinking about the importance of the environment than starting when they're very, very young, and having the school itself as a kind of learning tool for this. Now, we see really great examples of this, but it's certainly by no means, everywhere. Just putting a few solar panels in and doing recycling, I don't think really cuts it. So that's my personal opinion, and I see that a lot. And I've also followed garbage trucks and found out that they don't always go to the recycling place in my school, in Paris. So this is a nice school from Flanders, in Belgium. You can see that it's a very warm environment as well. They've really done a lot with the look of the school. Very clear spatial organisation. They have plenty of rainwater collection materials, rainwater capacity for rainwater collection. There are all sorts of devices around the school, games, which the kids interact with every day, particularly on the topic of water and outdoor spaces. There is also a large farm in the school, so every day the kids can actually pick what they eat and maybe help with their preparation. So it's a whole concept that the school has worked with to build this sort of environmental education in young children, and it would be nice if other schools did the same. We'll see. I'm nearly finished my case studies. This is some work that we're currently doing. In fact, my colleague Alefельд is leading a review on this Mexico Fetish School program, it's called. Just started in 2008 in Mexico. It's a national program, so you can imagine how big it is. Mexico is a very big city. Now, it has targeted the repair of about nearly 20,000 schools across Mexico, identified as those being really in the worst condition. And over 5,000 of these are preschools. So this isn't about building new schools or even about transforming or renovating. This is about sort of providing basic maintenance, if you like, for schools that are in most need in a big country. So one of the messages emerging from the review, really, and we've talked about this a lot, social participation, is that the school community, and in particular parents, have really been key to implementing this program, both in terms of practical assistance, but also in the educational development of their kids. So how this works is that for each project, so for each school, an organisation of social participation in education committee is formed, and this committee is composed of parents only, and they act as the legal client on behalf of the school. So this body signs a contract with the construction company who was undertaking the work. Now, the main functions of this parents' body are to comment, take decisions and supervise the functioning, operation and maintenance of the schools, to participate in all stages of the program, the Better Schools program, and to contribute to the transparency and presentation of the finances of the accounts, and to verify that the building materials are of good quality. They're also monitoring the timeliness of the project and trying to ensure that education the education of the kids is effective as little as possible. I mean, you can imagine some of these programs, and that's certainly a challenge in these countries who are implementing renovation programs. There's a big one in Portugal. How they actually go about renovating the schools while the kids are there is a big challenge, and we've done quite a bit of work on that. So if you have any questions, contact me or Alistair. So the review has observed how governments, through forming partnerships with communities, as I said, can really achieve tangible outcomes and motivate the community to take on more responsibility. It's an interesting model, and one that we haven't really seen elsewhere in the world. How am I going for time? Should I? 5 minutes. Okay. I'll have a look at this campus as an example of community use. It's called Golden Lane. It's right in the heart of London. It's composed of 3 institutions. It's built on a really, really tight site, and they've tried to really maximise space as much as possible. So it's a special needs school. It's a children's centre, and they're located on the ground floor, which allows them to be very closely linked to the community. Again, it's a question of accessibility. There's a primary school on the first floor, and they share decks with the lower floor. Somehow, look at the plan. And there is also a secondary school above. So it's a lot of kids. I can't remember how many kids there are, maybe 1,500 at the school. Again, the school is accessible, very welcoming to parents, is used constantly by the community, and is a very good example of community use and social participation. I might skip that school from Finland, which is very interesting. Again, a good example of a traditional Finnish house, in fact, that's located in the middle of the community, that serves as a daycare centre, pre-primary, primary school and community centre. You'll see some excellent examples on this from Finland. If you'd like to have a look at our database, we've got quite a few on there from Finland. Now this is a very good example of an integrated services model. We talked a little bit about this, and I was reading, and it has been referenced earlier, that more than 40,000 kindergartens in Russia were sold as real estate or converted for office use in the recent past. That's a lot. And of course, this is the same with other countries, with declining school-age populations in many countries, and difficulties of justifying financially keeping a school open in rural areas. Restrictions on space in cities means that buildings are being closed, or they're being transformed or recycled and integrated with other services, health, community services. So this building accommodates a primary school, a playroom for young kids, community support services, a gym and a health centre. In addition, and you can see the photo there of the elderly woman, there are 9 residential flats and accommodation for people with mental health problems requiring permanent care. So this is in Tilburg in the Netherlands. And so the school is very carefully arranged so that everyone can get to where they need to without disturbing the others. But it seems to work in terms of flow. So again, a very interesting case study which may be relevant to you. And last, I like this school. It's a special needs school, and I think this is also important. A school for young children with special needs, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of interacting with play equipment We know the importance of play, and it is also, of course, good to have the materials that kids can use to play with. Okay, it should be obviously safe, robust, stimulating to the senses, regularly cleaned and maintained. And this school in Scotland is for young kids with sensory impairments. Now, it contains, again, a range of facilities, a lot of play equipment and specialised equipment and areas, indoor and outdoor spaces for kids with disabilities. Again, the form of the site, of the facility is very much conducive. They did a lot of research on kids with sensory impairments, and this is, again, I think, quite an impressive case study on accessibility, on equipment, on many issues. And again, more information on this is in the publication. Before I wrap up, I wanted to say a few words on costs, because that's one thing we always get asked at the OECD. And indeed, we have information on costs of individual institutions, but it's really, really difficult to compare costs across countries. And certainly our members have asked us to avoid it, if at all possible, which we've done, so we just provide the cost of the individual facilities. Why is this? Well, because each country makes cost estimations differently. For example, some include playground maintenance and furniture, others don't. So, you know, let's be a bit careful when we talk about comparing costs across countries. But interesting to look at comparing costs across projects. But let's know what we're comparing. And what about space standards? It's another question we always get asked. What are the space standards? Well, do we need space standards? We did a little survey, actually. Alice did a survey on this a few years ago, finding out what space standards countries have. We got, what did we get? Research indicates in childcare centres that less than 3 metres of space per child increases aggression, but over 5 metres reduces social interaction. Is that right, Taka? Well, let's have a look. we'll see. Certainly Portugal, they say the average floor area per student is 2 square metres. But my question, our question would be at the OECD is do we really need space standards? So anyway, let's look at that a little bit in the workshop. So with all these great case studies, examples of good practice, we really need to think about maximising our return on these investments. We really need to start to understand better how this investment translates into improved educational and other outcomes for young children. Now, OECD has done a lot of work, studies, surveys, really to address policymakers' concern about measuring achieving measurable improvements in educational performance in schools, mainly for 15-year-olds, through the PISA survey. You might be aware of the PISA survey, and also through a survey of teachers called TALIS, and that is ongoing. We're also looking at exploring the assessment of adult competency through PDAC. So we've got across the board. But we need to really think about how this impacts on the early years. Now what we started to do is to look at this tool, new tool that OECD is developing called PISA-based Test for Schools. Now we're developing this. It might be ready by the end of the year, we hope. And it's really expected to bring PISA to the front line of educational delivery and raising the relevance and impact of the OECD, engaging parents, engaging school leaders and the general public in their efforts around educational improvement. Now, it's still a test for 15-year-olds, but it's a test that can be implemented at the school level. And school leaders can use the results to compare with other schools, to compare with other countries, and help them with various aspects of managing and improving the school. I wanted to end there. As I say, we're very happy to be at this conference and to be participating in this important work. I think we've got a lot to discuss. We have a number of international experts here, and we really would like you to not to be afraid to approach us and to talk with us, ask us questions, and indeed we have 100 questions for you as well. So let's all work together over the next couple of days and see if we can build from one another's knowledge and experience and make some good progress together. Thank you.